The quality of your relationship is based on the quality of your communication in that relationship. And when your communication falls apart, so does your relationship. Almost all relationship problems start as a communication problem, and almost every solution starts with a change, or starts when we change the way we communicate. Congratulations on finding this video. It tells me how committed you are to your relationship and your desire to have a breakthrough and improve that relationship. It also tells me that your relationship may not be going as planned. I'm Paul Sterling. I am a communication and intimacy coach for couples, and I work with couples that still love each other, but they are stuck. They're stuck in a crisis, trying to decide whether they should stay or go. They're stuck in conflict, and the harder they try, the worse things get. They're stuck in a relationship rut. The spark is fading. There's boredom in the bedroom. They take each other for granted, and they want to bring back that loving feeling. And the last group, their relationship is good, if not great, and they want to make it even better. So this is going to be a longer video. So I'm going to dive deep into two different couples that I've worked with and how they created breakthroughs. So if you're interested in a breakthrough in your relationship, get a cup of coffee, hang on. We'll probably spend almost a half an hour together. And if you're wanting a breakthrough in your relationship, it will be worth it. If you're not interested in a breakthrough, probably not the right video for you. And what I've learned from one of my mentors, a guy named Tony Robbins, and from working with couples for over 30 years, that almost every couple is just one breakthrough away from making their relationship remarkable. And yes, I am reading. I have some notes here. I want to make sure that I cover everything. And I'm going to be talking about two couples. I changed their names to protect their privacy, but the stories are very, very real. So here we go. It was October 25th, 2018. I was standing with a group of amazing people. Most of them I'd never met before. We're watching the sunset over the mesa in Arizona at Eden Hot Springs Retreat Center. I had been invited there to facilitate my client's weekend wedding event. So if you could picture a mini Burning Man hosted at a hot springs in the desert, with the wedding being at the center of this weekend-long celebration of love. But it almost didn't happen. This is a wedding that almost didn't happen because 3 years earlier, Rachel had called my office, and after introducing herself, she told me that a mutual friend of ours, Scott, who runs one of the larger relationship coaching academies, had highly recommended me. By the way, thanks, Scott. Rachel and I had a brief conversation. She told me that she and Mark loved each other, but how desperate she was for better communication with him. She said it felt like cats and dogs trying to get along and understand one another. I fed back what I thought I heard her say, and she teared up a little and thanked me and said, "You got it." She wanted to know what's next. And I told her what I do is we should set up what I call a relationship breakthrough conversation that included her partner to see how and if I could help. We picked the date and a time for all three of us to meet over Zoom. And most of my clients around the world, I meet them over Zoom. So I gave her some homework for the two of them, simple stuff to help them get the most out of our talk. They needed to watch a 15-minute video and then spend some time answering some questions on their relationship self-assessment. So, as Jerry Maguire said, or in the movie Jerry Maguire, help me, help you. So that's what they did. And it was Saturday afternoon when we all got together. Seeing them over Zoom, I realized that this was the kind of couple that other couples are envious of. Rachel was smart, kind, beautiful, and successful. She had started her own company. Mark was also smart, handsome, capable, in great shape, a California surfer dude. Two things became obvious right away. Number one, was how much they loved each other. And number two was how quickly they could trigger each other with their old communication patterns and how quickly they spiraled into a shitstorm. They showed up in a healthy state of skeptical optimism. Skeptical because before coming to me, they had tried almost everything they could think of, and most of the time, the results were disappointing. And slightly optimistic because they had read some of the testimonials from other clients and thought if those couples could do it, we can do it. So after our introductions, we got down to it, and I laid out the format. Today, what I'm going to do is help you get clear on four things. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? What's in the way? What are those I call them relationship roadblocks? And what would a breakthrough look like for the two of you? And sometimes a breakthrough looks different for one partner than it is for the other. So we all agreed on the agenda. Rachel started. Her voice was wavering. She told me again about how desperate she was for better communication with her beloved. And how heartbreaking it was when they felt like cats and dogs trying to get along and understand one another. Mark quickly dove in and added that I don't feel heard or understood by her either. He didn't want to be made out as that he was the perpetrator here. They were both hurting. And they both knew that better communication was the solution, but they didn't know how. In fact, that the harder they tried to talk about these issues, the worse things got, and nobody felt heard, understood, and valued. They left these conversations feeling hopeless and helpless. And I'm wondering at this point, can you relate? Does this sound familiar? Do you have these kind of upsets in your relationship? Anyway, I asked if it had always been this way or had something changed. This is when Mark jumped in and said, not only are we living together now, but we're also started working together, and that's when it got worse. So after getting a little more of their history, we got down to the critical question. What would a breakthrough look like for them, and how could I help? There was some sadness in Rachel's voice as she shared they had a dream of getting married, but that dream seemed way far away because they were having such a hard time communicating and getting along. And they knew they didn't stand a chance unless they had a huge breakthrough in the way they talk to each other. So get the most out of this video. Think about where you need a breakthrough and listen to what they did. See if you can apply some of that stuff to your breakthrough. Is it a breakthrough in intimacy, communication, getting your needs met, having tough conversations, reawakening dreams, whatever it is? Anyway, Mark looked away and said, we get stuck in these downward spirals, and the harder we try to talk about it, the worse things got. So we end up giving up. They were both scared because they knew that when the communication falls apart, so does the relationship. She said, we know that something is missing in our communication. We don't know what it is. Can you help us? Before answering her question, I let her know that I knew how painful, frustrating, and confusing it can be when it doesn't feel like your partner hears you or understands you or values what you're saying. You often end up wondering, do they even love me anymore? Well, after that, I let them know that there was help. I had told them about Michael and Diane, another couple in their late 40s from San Diego that I had worked with. They were also referred to me, and they had some similar communication problems. Before coming to see me, they had tried marriage counseling unsuccessfully, that's their words, not mine, earlier in their relationship. Michael told me this was a last-ditch effort to save their relationship. They'd tried everything they could think of to get their relationship unstuck over many years, and nothing had really helped. He told me they figured if a psychologist couldn't help, then how the hell could a relationship coach be a benefit? I told him that was a great question, and I laid out what we do differently. See, what they had been doing is they've been chasing the symptoms, trying to figure out whose fault it was, who was to blame, who needed to be fixed. And as you can imagine, that's pretty sexy stuff, right? Not really. Anyway, Diane let me know that the more they did that, the further apart they felt. Communicating that way was driving a wedge between them. Oh, at this point, I stopped and I asked Rachel and Mark if they could relate to Michael and Diane's story. They both nodded and said very much. This feels like our story. What happened? Did they make it? Did they get their breakthrough? I told them that I told Michael and Diane. Glad you're following the story here. I told Michael and Diane the quote that says, "A problem clearly defined is a problem half solved." And here's the problem that Michael and Diane agreed upon. They were stuck in a painful pattern of making each other wrong and were communicating hurt to hurt instead of heart to heart. Can you relate to this? Is this something that happened in your relationship? I know it had happened in mine. I went through a painful divorce and several painful broken engagements because I didn't know how to communicate heart to heart, and it was hurt to hurt. So they desperately needed a way to interrupt their old pattern or it was going to destroy their relationship. They needed a breakthrough or maybe even several of them. So the next step with Michael and Diane in turning things around was to have them stop doing damage. I'll say that again. First step, stop doing damage, stop making things worse. But since they didn't know what they were doing, they needed some help. So to stop making things worse, they needed to stop making the 5 communication mistakes. And I talk about this. I wrote a book, became a bestseller, Argue Less, Love More. It's all about these 5 communication mistakes. These mistakes stop open and honest communication in its tracks and block any chance of intimacy. Briefly put, they are storytelling, case building, message assuming, cup stuffing, the fatal F's, otherwise known as maleitis. When I explained each of these in detail, Diane was shocked. We do all of these, all of the time. Michael was shaking his head in sad agreement. I assured them they weren't alone. Most couples make these mistakes and don't even know it. I think that's why my book about communication, the one I just showed you, Argue Less, Love More. Yes, I'm plugging my book. Buy my book. Get it on Amazon. It is worth it. It is an act of love, and that's why it became a bestseller. What we focused on at the beginning is once they were able to recognize, so the first step is recognize these 5 relationship wrecking mistakes. Being able to recognize them helped them avoid making them. The next thing they needed to do was discover how to recover quickly and compassionately when they made one of these mistakes by mistake. And then most importantly, we practice how to repair the connection when one or both of them got triggered by these mistakes. So there's only 5 of them that make up about 80 or so % of your upsets. Once you know them, they're easier to avoid. Michael was blown away by the difference that heart-to-heart communication made in their relationship and sent me this testimonial. I'm glad we took a chance with Paul. It's making a huge difference for us. As a couple, we interact differently and have largely ridded ourselves of the detrimental patterns we'd fallen into and couldn't get out of by ourselves. So I'm asking you, have you fallen into some patterns that are wrecking your relationship and you need some help getting out? Stay to the end. There's a way that we can spend a half an hour together and go through and have your relationship breakthrough conversation. So I'll keep going. His testimonial continued, we are happier and more open with one another now and enjoy the new space that has opened up for us. Our thanks go to Paul as well as our recommendation. He's exceptionally good at what he does. ML, San Diego, California. Now, after hearing Michael and Diane's story, Rachel and Mark were smiling a little and agreed that this is what they needed and they wanted to know when they could get started because they wanted to go for it. So what they did is they signed up for a relationship breakthrough series, which is 10 sessions. They're about an hour to an hour and a half over Zoom. And we got started. So when we ended our video chat, I could tell they were excited about the future in their relationship. and that they had had a breakthrough during our first call. And a breakthrough is when something becomes possible that seemed impossible before. Now, in our first session, I told them that if they don't agree on the problem, they won't agree on the solution, and we won't make any progress. One problem they both agreed on was once their communication fell apart because they got triggered by one of the mistakes, that it was a downward spiral, that their communication became reactive, which meant they only had two options. When you're reactive, the only two options you have are dominate or be dominated, which is lose-lose. Nobody wins in that situation. Their transformation was amazing, but it wasn't always easy or instant. In the beginning, there was upsets and setbacks. They were tempted to blame each other. They wanted to slip back into the old habits from time to time, but they were committed, and they did transform the way they communicated. This is why you go to a gym on a regular basis, not once a year and hope that you're cured for the year. You go every week so you can change your habits and patterns, and that's what they were doing. The more they practiced, the easier and easier it became for them to recognize when they were communicating hurt to hurt versus communicating heart to heart. And when they screwed up, which we all do, they could recover much faster and repair the damage, sometimes just in minutes versus taking days or weeks in the past, which meant they got to spend a lot more time communicating heart to heart versus hurt to hurt. I'm here to tell you that most couples are only one breakthrough away from a remarkable relationship. For Rachel and Mark, their breakthrough came when they communicated heart to heart. Magic happened in their relationship. Now, here's the rest of the story. It wasn't long after working together that Rachel and Mark called me with some hot news they wanted to share. They were engaged, and they were ecstatic about it, and they were going to get married. I mean, how cool is that? To be able to go from not getting along to wanting to get married. They were also calling to ask if I could come to Arizona and help facilitate their weekend wedding. Well, yes. I told them I would be honored, and it was an amazing event. One last note about the wedding. Rachel felt that my heart-to-heart communication method was so powerful that the gift she gave every one of her wedding guests was a copy of my best-selling book, Argue Less, Love More. That was Rachel and Mark's story, and it was also Michael and Diane's story. How about you? What do you want your story to be? Are you ready for your breakthrough in your relationship? Can you picture how different your relationship would be if you could communicate heart to heart, even when you're hurting? So here's the deal. I'm guessing you say you want to spend less time arguing and more time loving each other. That you want to be able to create a safe space for open, honest, and vulnerable communication. That you want to bring back more romance and passion and intimacy and be able to resolve conflicts quickly and easily. That you really want a remarkable relationship. But let me ask you a tough question. Do you really? Are you willing to do the work? Are you going to do something about it? If you're ready, or even if you're just curious about what's possible, click on the button below. Schedule a complimentary relationship breakthrough conversation. Let's spend a half an hour or more together and see if or how I can help. Go to www.arguelesslovemore.net/time. arguelesslovemore.net/time. And remember, you're only one breakthrough away from a remarkable relationship. Rachel and Mark's breakthrough was when we communicate heart to heart, magic happens in our relationship. So what about you? What's your breakthrough going to be? Is it around communication, conflict resolution, intimacy, ending boredom in the bedroom, being more grateful in your relationship? All right, thanks. And again, arguelesslovemore.net/time. See you soon.